The problem is we have a Porsche 996 or 997 manual transmission with a broken transmission mount. The mount is very expensive, but the replacement is very difficult. Here we come up with the all-German auto transmission mount tool. The tool consists of a removal and installation mandrel, a cylinder and a cylinder cap, combined with the 2 threaded rods for compression. This tool enables you to easily replace the transmission mount with the transmission in the car. The failure that occurs to the mount is that the vulcanized rubber separates from the housing on the mount. This the driver will experience inside the car as a slight vibration under acceleration, or very typical that you put the car in reverse and go to back up and you notice a little flutter or a little chunk as the mount lifts in the opposite direction. So in regards to the mount, let's talk about the actual mount just for 2 seconds. We supply the Limforder mount, which is the factory replacement mount. Our mounts that we sell, we have turned down the housing just below the transmission diameter for a distance of 4 millimeters, which makes the installation even easier since it is self-guided into the transmission housing. However, this is not necessary. You can easily do it with any mount, whether you get a Limforder or a factory supplied mount. In regards to the Boxsters, where the engine mount is this configuration into an aluminum bracket, you can choose to, instead of buying the entire mount like this with bracket, which is quite costly, to buy just the insert and replace that separately. Here we have a factory original Porsche mount. You'll see that the Limforder mount is identical to the factory Porsche mount. The only difference is on the mount that you buy from Limforder, the actual little Porsche logo has been removed. The same tool that works for the 996 and 997 manual transmission also works for removal and installation of the Porsche Boxster mount. Also, the 996 Tiptronic transmission utilizes the same tool. However, we have a separate cylinder that is clearance for the Tiptronic transmission housing that is sold separately if you're doing the chip. We've chosen not to include this automatically since there's not that many out there. But let's get started and show you how to replace the mount with the transmission in the car. Here we're doing it on a Carrera 4S 996. You start by removing the plastic belly pan. Then slightly support the transmission with I-jack, or if you're doing it on the floor with a regular jack, just enough to take the weight of the transmission off the mount. Remove the nuts that hold the brackets in place. Remove the 15mm nuts on the side of the crossover bolts. Pull out the crossover bolts like this, and the forward boot bracket can be taken down like this. The upper mount you don't have to remove from the car. Just simply pull it down off the studs and rotate it like this, and you can leave it on top of the transmission. Next, remove the 2 urethane side washers. You'll need those again later. To remove the mount, insert the removal and installation mandrel over the mount like this. Please note that there is a machined notch that matches up with the notch in the transmission casing. Insert the compression rods through the mount and push them into the slot in the removal mandrel. Note the machined notch in the cylinder and place it up against the transmission housing to provide clearance. Then install the cap. Apply a little anti-seize or grease to the threaded rods and the face of the washers. While tightening these by hand, make sure the cylinder is properly located with the notch towards the transmission. On the other side, make sure the removal mandrel is properly located into the mount. Again, if there is excess rubber of rubber that has come out due to the mount separating, cut it out with an X-Acto knife or similar to allow the removal manual to perfectly seat in the mount. This is very important because if this is not properly seated, it could damage the mount and make it difficult to come out. Once the removal tool is installed, start by ratcheting on both of the nuts to get good tension. It's normal that it takes a little bit of compression to initially get the mount moving. Continue to switch off between the upper and the lower rod until the mount is fully removed and into the cylinder. And now the mount is out. To install the mount, ensure that the hole in the transmission is clean. Apply a little bit of grease to the inside of the hole on the leading edge. This we're doing from the driver's side of the transmission. To install the new mount, make sure the flat side is facing up. Secondly, the AGA mount has a very small machine step right here. Insert the through threaded rod and the installation mandrel into the end of the mount. Install the mount with the step into the transmission. From the driver's side of the transmission, install the cylinder cap onto the transmission. Please note the cutout is located towards the notch in the transmission. Again, apply a little grease to the threaded rods and to the face of the washers. Install the nuts and tighten by hand until the tool is snug. With the ratcheting wrench, begin to tighten the two rods evenly. As you're tightening the mount, ensure that it's going straight into the transmission housing from the driver's side. When the installation is complete, you'll feel the ratcheting firming up. At that point, the mount is bottomed out against the machine step in the cylinder cap. Now, remove the tool and reverse the procedure and install the mounts to the chassis. So, if you're replacing the transmission mount on a 996 with Tiptronic, you'll need this set of adapters that are sold separately. So on the Tiptronic transmission like we have here, the principle is exactly the same, but there is a little coolant valve mounted right here. No need to disconnect a drain or anything. Just take these two bolts out right here that goes to the transmission housing, and it allows you to push the valve up and down and still get the rods in with plenty of clearance. So to pull the mount out on the Tiptronic, we use the adapter here with the large cutout. The adapter goes on and it needs to be positioned so it clears the casting on the transmission housing. The procedure of pulling it out is the same, installing the cap, greasing the shaft and pulling it out. When you go to install the mount, you use a short adapter, again from the passenger side. Install it over the housing so the nuts clears the casting on the transmission. Center it and install the cap. Now start the bolts with the grease and the washers, and you can suck the mount into the transmission housing. That's the only difference between the manual and the Tiptronic transmission. By using this AGA tool, we have created a solution that allows you to replace the mount without taking the transmission and everything out of the car in order to perform this job. This saves a huge cost and gets the car repaired correctly. For more information on this tool, go to agatools.com, where you can find more detailed information about this tool and also the other products that we have available that saves time and makes money.